Go. Oh, I think it's now.
Good evening. Tonight we watched Leviathan, a Russian language film, fortunately with subtitles, although there wasn't that much talking, so I'm not certain it made a whole lot of difference. So can somebody please describe the overall story?
Well, it appears to be a Russian take on the story of Job. It's about a man whose life is just falling apart. Mayor wants to take his home away. His wife has an affair with his lawyer, which I was
And brother.
What was he, literal brother?
Literal.
Yeah.
Okay, I got that too, but I wasn't sure if because the fact that wasn't reinforced more often that they.
No,
But
they pretty much
there's
clearly
that photo.
established it.
There's
Show
that
the
photo.
photo.
Okay, so his wife screwed around with his brother, and
Loses his house.
and then the wife either kills herself or is murdered. That's not, it's not completely cleared up how it went, but
And considering the circumstances, it doesn't really make a difference because the fix was in.
Right.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And but unlike Job, who manages to crawl out of his shitstorm, he doesn't. The bad guys win.
Yeah.
And
Job accepts his fate, and he wants an appeal, so he doesn't listen. What?
He wants an appeal, which he loses.
Job never asked for an appeal.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. That's why he's stuck in jail. What were you saying, Jim?
Oh, that's very cool.
Oh no, I was wondering, is the Job stuff the main character of the line, and then the overall story is just the mayor's plot to
No, that
build a
is the
church?
mayor's. That is the Job story is it isn't the story of Job, but it is in terms of the travails of somebody who has everything and everything is taken away from him. It is a parallel to that. And it's ironic because the house and everything is taken away in order to build a house of God.
Okay.
That's the irony of it. That's sort of the punchline, that this is all in order to further the Eastern Orthodox religion, which is being used as a blunt force tool against the people of Russia writ large in the country, by the Politburo or whatever. So it's a little microcosm of what has happened to Russia. I mean, that's kind of what I think it's supposed to be an analogy or a metaphor for the larger picture. But it doesn't have a happy ending like Job's does, because it doesn't have the one thing that the story of Job has, which is there is a point to it. There is their interpretation of Job was a little different than I think, at least the more modern interpretation of it.
more Western interpretation.
More Western interpretation, right.
I've studied the story of Job, and the Job that appears in our Bible, at least, really is like taken from. It's pieced together from several different sources. It's not a completely coherent tale there, but so it is subject to interpretation. It is
Right.
But
it was essentially a test of Job's faith, and the one thing about the story in the Old Testament is that he remained steadfast in his devotion to God, even though he's not necessarily happy about all the things that have happened. But he remains steadfast, and he then wins big. He gets a new house, a new family, a new wife, new everything.
You know, lots of people around him died.
Oh yeah, no.
Boils
I mean, all,
on his skin. But
all these terrible things happened to him, everybody around him, and
I'm okay.
he survives, but then he also gets sort of a jackpot. So there are rewards for the faithful. This was
So you're saying if this movie were 2 hours and 50 minutes, it might have had a happy ending?
well, if it after he is out of jail, something might have turned around. I'm sure you could easily have it, but it wasn't set up that way. It was pretty much what we just talked about. So let's see if we can even find a main character in this.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the camera is focused on Nicholas, the father who loses the house and has the life.
He's sort of
I
the
don't-
protagonist.
But I don't think he's a main character.
You John McCoy?
Yes.
Yeah. When you said Nicholas.
Collier is the
Oh. Did you get that from IMDb?
Yeah.
Oh.
He's just well read.
Okay.
I got that from the movie Collier. I didn't.
I was going to believe. So yeah, the focus seems to be him. You know, like I said in the middle, you know, I felt like emotionally I felt more empathetic with Lilia. I felt like we were feeling her most, but then.
Yeah, but we weren't. I don't know that we. I think it was more we were sympathetic to her because she was the only one who was showing emotion practically. That was.
Yeah.
Well, I was sympathetic to the lawyer brother at parts,
But
yeah, not on his journey either.
No, and we certainly didn't. The closest thing we had to a main character perspective was Kolya, but you know, we weren't really sharing it. You know, we were watching him, and there was, other than the fact that he felt he was wrong, it was really a big question mark as to what he was about. You know, because he really didn't even. He stated that, you know, sort of this, I want this thing at the beginning, but then he really didn't do anything after that. Once the verdict happened, he didn't have any thrust to making it happen.
His brother.
The brothers started to, and then he got scared off, and then it just sort of meandered around while the mayor slowly tore his life apart.
Mhm.
And meanwhile, he's drinking himself to death.
Right.
You know, and the son, he's like, you get all, you know, it's like, as I mentioned during our viewing, it's basically a slice of life. You know, it's just, here's the situation, here's how it transpires, here's where it ends up. I mean, I think you do get a sense of, you know, the story outcome, success or failure. It seems to be a failure because we trying to have him retain the house and such. Clearly, if you were on the mayor's side, then it was a success. But I don't think that was I don't think the intent was to say, "Yay!" You know,
Yeah.
they tore down the house and replaced it with a nice big church.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think that was supposed to be a success. So I think it's a failure. And you know, you kind of think it's sort of supposed to be bad, but he's sort of, at that point, he's anesthetized. There's not even a sense of, you know, bad. It's just, he's just like nothing.
Well, his last line is even, I don't understand anything. So
Right.
he can't have a judgment.
Well, no, he could be in a bad place. He doesn't understand, you know, the world he knew. I mean, so it feels like it's a tragedy. I mean, it really does seem like, if you said, "Oh, this is a tragedy," it's like, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
I buy that.
Yeah,
I don't think it's really very bittersweet. I don't think there's a whole lot of sweet in there. So, you know, so you could say, okay, it's a failure bad story. Certainly, he's not in a good place. Nobody really is.
Except the mayor. But
What about the story driver, action or decision? That's pretty clear.
Yeah, I mean, it's bookended. Well, except for the final scene at the church.
Well, as far as
Cully is concerned, it's bookended with the lady reading the verdict.
Right.
You know, it's I thought it was it felt like
well,
a decision
you also
driver.
had the decision of the wife to basically go for a midnight walk with thoughts of suicide, with the likelihood that she actually did commit suicide, and then they just use that as an excuse to frame him. You know, just like, oh, you didn't come to the warrant. What warrant? This warrant. You know, it's like, oh, all right, yeah. You know, and the decision by the mayor to take things into his hands. Remember, he makes a decision. I'm not, you know, he gets coaching from the.
It's weird. There's so many of those are off screen. The mayor.
No, but we see him. He's basically is being coached by the priest, and the mayor goes. And the next thing we see him is take action.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, okay, you know, it was sort of, you've got a decision to make, and the only thing, you know, what you would need to do is you need to take this and be strong. Next thing we see is him taking out, what's his name, and scaring the Jesus out of him.
Right.
You know, and so that's a big turning point, because he goes from being victimized to, you know, to victimizing and back into the driver's seat. Yeah. Sort of that's almost like the midpoint of the story. So I think those are, they do seem to be very much a decision-driven story, decision-drive actions. And there also seems to be an option lock. There are not that many that you have to get rid of, you know, the rights to the house. Then you have to be able to, then there's this threat of the attorney, and who's the only other remaining family member other than the immediate family. Then you get rid of the wife, and essentially, you know, you get rid of the guy, and then you get rid of the kid. You know, so you have, once you've got rid of the kid, that's the last impediment. The next thing you see is the house being torn down. You know, so it's pretty much, once you've got everybody out of that house, there's, you know, you either tear it down and, you know, build what you were going to build there, or not. So it was a pretty, you know, pretty clear-cut option law. You know, obviously the main character, we really don't have one. So there's really no way to identify.
Well, I mean, in terms of trying to find a main character and impact character, there is no change steadfast dynamic. There's no one has compelled. I mean, they could have been
and there's no growth. That's the thing, is there's no growth.
Yeah.
So it's not even like it's a partial story where it just isn't completed. All you're watching are overall story characters who have their approach to problem solving, and that's the one they keep on using. They keep using the same one over and over and over, and then, you know, one by one they are deemed, you know, inappropriate to the problem, and it fails.
No one changes their point of view.
Yeah,
at all,
or their behavior.
Yeah,
yeah. So their approach to the problem, nobody changes that. They're like little, you know, wind-up. They're set with a particular agenda, and here's how they behave toward problems. That's it. They just do it all the time. So we really don't. We just have an overall story here. Now, thematically, well, let's assume there isn't the rest there, because if there is, culturally, I can't find it. As from a reception point of view. But so what do we see? What domain would the overall story be in? Is it a situation? Is it activity? Fixed attitude? Psychology?
I think it's a situation.
Okay.
And I think it's being in a corrupt, it's. I don't have a great. I think it's sort of. They want the house. The mayor wants the house, and until the house is his, this is going to continue, and that's the situation.
Well,
I think it's something a little more specific than that.
well,
I think that's correct, but I think, how do you say, well, when does the problem exist? I mean, how is it a situation? What is the fixed state that is?
So there's a house on the land that he wants to build on.
That's part of it.
and the mayor has an election coming up, and
that's I think you're getting to the thematics and stuff. No, there's a judgment against the house, so it's already deemed.
It's already over.
Right, it's already over in terms of whether or not he can do it. The problem is it's possessed by people who shouldn't be there, according to law.
Right.
And that's a situation. So, like, it's a standoff. It's whether you're, a bank robber stuck inside a bank and the police surrounded by police, and it's a standoff. Or, Masada, where you got this group up on this plateau and surrounded by a bunch of
One of the things about the movie
an army
that drove me crazy was the lack of specifics of time. Because even though there was a judgment, the one thing we learn is it's not in effect yet when the mayor comes to the house.
Right.
And we don't actually know. You have 1 week to get off. It's just sort of this.
Well, and that's why if it had a time lock, it would be really clear. But they clearly didn't, and it was because of that. It wasn't expressly said what the options were, but it became pretty clear once they started disappearing.
But even I agree with that. I'm just saying, even if they'd said you have 1 week to get off, and then 10 days passed, so there's still no time lock. There was just a sense of, were they in the house illegally, or were they just in the house dragging their feet until they had to be out?
Well, the declaration said effective immediately.
But then the lawyer, when the mayor visited the house, said it's not in effect yet.
I know, but the judgment was in effect. That's the point.
Yeah.
Is that the reason that there was conflict is that the case is over, and he's still in the house. So there wasn't a ticking time.
No.
It was just, okay, so we've got to get the squatters out of the house. Essentially. They're not really squatters, but they no longer rightfully have possession, but they have possession.
Right.
yeah, that was my feeling too. Past, present, future, but how things are changing, progress.
I think it's how things are changing.
Yeah, that's where I felt.
So you have what? Threat, security, fantasy, fact.
The lawyer cares about facts.
He does.
No, I'm not really kidding.
No, he says it several times.
Yeah, he loses to the stories that people create in the fantasy. There's tons of threat. There's no security.
Well, the guys.
What do you mean? You've got all these policemen. No, I'm serious.
That's a good point.
That's the whole problem is that the blending, you've got security versus threat. Where's the line there? Because you have the friend who is his pal who then ends up turning, siding with them. So you've got this constant, give and take, the play between those. That's where I think the thematics are. And that's where you've got the threat of, I've got an upcoming election. I'm secure.
I'm trying to. I guess building there is intended to help secure his election.
Right.
Somehow.
Well, yes, absolutely.
Would you say that's a result he's going for?
It could be. Could be a result.
I don't know.
Consonant.
Do you think we actually have enough to
No.
get down to the element level?
No.
I think
Well,
I'm not sure that we have enough to pick which of those, but I do think you see a lot of that being explored. I'm just, the problem is you can't. There's no way to triangulate on it because there's no other perspectives to gauge that by.
What's interesting is it's unlike Z, which felt like it was in all the same thematics in all four.
Right.
This one does not feel like knowledge, ability, desire, and thought are particularly present.
No.
I don't feel value, confidence.
No, it feels like it's one thread of a full story that you could have, probably put him in either activity or psychology. I mean, he drank so much, it might have been more of a psychology story for him, but you don't know who the influence character is. Is it supposed to be the brother, or is it supposed to be the wife, or is it supposed to be you don't know. The son, the son seems to be a really good candidate, not only because he's there the entire time, but I mean, he seems to be the one that is really focused on just dad, but
you can definitely see the potential if there was a little more getting inside his Kolya's head. He has desires, but he doesn't seem to have any abilities. Certainly he has.
Well, he has abilities, but they're of no value to the story.
Yeah.
He's this fix-it man who can fix anything, except he can't fix his life. But that's like, so what? It doesn't really have anything to do with the story. That's the
right,
problem.
but you can see the potential.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
There was a time it's put in with that.
Yeah, I know. It's just.
I hear the sarcasm.
I kept waiting for the monolith to land in those, lingering landscape shots.
And it's interesting because you see all these signs of the past, with all the between the skeletons of the houses and the skeleton of the whales and all this sort of dead stuff.
All the photos and his grandfather had lived in that spot. Like, the past was very present.
Right.
They dragged out the pictures of Brezhnev and Khrushchev. Although they didn't have Stalin. They went all the way back to Lenin. It's interesting they didn't include Stalin in that set of portraits, but I don't know if that means anything, but
and then, you saw a lot of the present because it seems like they're just focused, everybody's just focused on the present because that's the only way they could get through it. It wasn't like it was a problem, it wasn't a concern, it's just, we just saw them existing.
Going to her job at the fish factory.
And the thing is that whereas the goal of the future, it seemed, I don't know if the goal is how things have changed, but the future was clearly a really big part of the mayor's concern. You saw definitely a situation and all the sort of textures of that, but that's it. There's so much else that could have been explored, but just wasn't. Yeah. Which of course means it wasn't very emotionally engaging. And it was only intellectually engaging and emotionally engaging in those brief moments where it looked like a narrative might come out or start, whether it was with the wife or the brother or the son. But those quickly just sort of faded right back into the ether of the overall story. They sort of disappeared quickly.
Yeah. So why do you think the 99%?
Well, I think. Well, I
Was it
99%
critic?
What are Rotten Tomatoes?
I got
because
9% on
99.
Yeah, I think it's because it's a it's a different world. It's beautifully drawn.
Right.
I mean, it seemed absolutely authentic.
Yes, it did.
And I think that alone, which is very difficult to capture authenticity in fiction, in narrative, I think that probably more than anything else was the reason that it was like it. I don't think the thematics were the thing that really got everybody, the politics of it. I think that may have been why it was, if it was, I don't know if it was popular in Russia, but I can certainly see there being a faction of people that might have liked it, and probably a faction of people that really disliked it for that reason. But it did seem very authentic, and I think that, you know, the verisimilitude of the problem and the lack of, you know, big things happening. You know, it didn't. It was a very muted story. You know, literally, and also, you know, metaphorically.
I always wonder if you spend your days going to action movies, if this movie is a relief. It's so different that it actually, you go like, oh, that's something I can really sink my teeth in.
What do you mean, like, from the point of view of a critic?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. From the point of view of a critic.
Right. Yeah, I think that it could very well be like that, because it wasn't boring.
No.
You know, that's the thing, is that it was slow, but it wasn't dull, and I think that that's really unusual. I think that because it wasn't dull, it had that authentic feel, and it was really beautiful to look at.
No, for lots of the movie, I was incredibly tense.
Right.
And I got to give it credit for doing that in a way that felt very genuine. I didn't know when the tension was going to break. I knew something was going to happen.
Yeah, they set up a lot of potentials with the characters.
Yeah, and so that I got to give them credit for.
And they started right off by, you know, identifying Collier as being this chaotic agent, you know, loose cannon that, oh, what's he gonna do? You know, and I think that was great, because you don't want him to make things worse for himself, which of course it turns out he actually doesn't do that. Everybody else does that for him.
Right.
You know, which again I think is sort of helps with the Job thing, where he's not the bad guy. He doesn't actually. He's the victim. He's the only thing he's guilty of is pretty much inaction and you know, drinking too much. So I think that, you know, just trying to escape, die without being dead. You know.
No, it's interesting. Yeah, if they had made the brother the main character, or at least an essential character. We talked about how he likes facts, and underneath, and there's this a whole conversation. I believe with Leah that you know, she presses him about his faith, and it's like, well, you know, you can't prove anything. Something in effect, you can't prove anything, and you can't disprove anything.
No, I mean, you see that argument being made in there, and but it's more thematic.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not to try to resolve the story.
Right. It's not the underlying problem.
Right. That's why I think it is up there. In fact, fantasy security threat. That's why it's not down at the element level. That's at that theme level.
But accurate, non-accurate, yeah, and you can't really nail it down. But you can see pieces of things: result, process,
sure,
accurate, non-accurate, ending, unending. But yeah, trying to pick a story form out of that is just reaching, or it's just kind of wishful thinking, I think.
Right, and ultimately it's not a one-line. Well, it is sort of a one-liner.
There's a certain amount of interest in looking at how they talk about faith and what you can prove. The courts are all about proving. There are facts that should go into court cases, whereas the last court case has, I'm going to guess, totally fabricated facts as opposed to another. So there is, I feel like English majors in college field day writing an essay on this movie. Like, that stuff is really cleverly done, and it's not accidental, any of that stuff. And the fact that he's not religious, and this is a story of Joe, and you know that you know in Job the judgment begins the story and then his life falls apart, and in this it began essentially with the judgment and his life falls apart. Like, this stuff is intellectually interesting,
Right.
but not.
It's engaging intellectually, but not emotionally.
Yeah.
You can, and they just leave it up to say, ooh, what do you think the symbolism means? The symbolism of the,
Right.
I mean, we know.
Well, I did read the trivia on IMDb, and the director even says, I wanted the audience to make the movie in their head.
Yeah.
Right. So he left all of those pieces out, so
Yeah.
they would try to make sense of it.
Right.
Fair enough. I mean, and you could do that. It's just that you're not going to get this. The audience is going to make up different stories.
Right. Exactly. I can make up a story. I can make up a story in my head, but I'm like filling in so much.
Right. Which, of course, for our purposes, kind of means our job is done. I mean, realistically, I think what we found is that there really isn't there's no grand argument story here. There's a facet of it, and we can get certain understanding of what's going on, but not a whole lot. And so I think that's a learning lesson. So especially since you can create something that is engaging and interesting and popular, and have it be, from a story point of view, somewhat dysfunctional,
But not inconsistent.
right? And that's the important part. It wasn't. I mean, you can see it fit all in the right places with the right pieces. So it had part of a story form. It just didn't have all of the rest. But since a story form is essentially like it's a little piece. Any quad has essentially all the components necessary for an entire story. It's just that a much simpler resolution. We could see, there does seem like there could be a full story there by only seeing one fourth of it, one facet of it, one perspective of it. So that's why it wasn't completely, it fell apart. I couldn't figure out what's going to happen. Didn't know when it was going to be over. It had much more structure.
I mean, in many ways, I think it's similar to The Revenant. Has everyone seen The Revenant?
Mm-hmm.
You haven't seen The Revenant. Okay.
Let's not put that in this podcast.
Okay.
Just because, some people haven't seen it, and it's still a new movie. So I guess we'll call it quits for tonight.
Right.
And we can keep on talking.
Okay.
Oh, here we go.